to Differentiated Instruction in the 4th grade math classroom. I'm glad you could be here with us today. My name's Lynette Cliffe. I'm the producer of this show, along with my co-producer, Heather Coe. Heather Coe is my partner, who she actually lives in Colorado, and I was the intervention expert, which means the intervention took place in my classroom. And Heather is the data expert, and she took all of the data that I gave to her and she collected it and created some beautiful graphs that you'll see later on. We are working on this collaboration research project together for our capstone at Concordia University, Irvine. Educators should be champions of every student who enters the schoolhouse doors. Carol Ann Tomlinson. She is a guru in differentiation. And you'll see her a little bit later in a video in our presentation today. I so believe in this. There are students who have wonderful champions in their life at home, and some of them don't have any champions except for those at school. And so it is our goal to be the champions. Well, how can we do that? So many kids need so many different things. I'm one teacher with this year 30 students. But I want to do the very best, and so you'll see that our study was geared around differentiation. How can I reach each student? This presentation today will have a brief background on our capstone, our primary and secondary questions. We will have a very brief literature review overview of differentiation. We'll talk a little bit about the intervention itself and the conclusion to our findings. When American schools began way back and public education came into being, most often there were multiple grade levels in one classroom. But it was very personalized. You might have one first grader, and you worked with that first grader with what they needed, and so on. But as the Industrial Revolution came into being, our classrooms began to become one size fits all. Now I have 30 students, they all have to reach the same goal at the same time. We know that with our world changing, our students really need to become innovators, they need to be creators and entrepreneurs, they need to be able to be career and college ready. And so one of the ways we can facilitate that for our children is through differentiation. Before we began our problem, Heather and I sat down and said, okay, let's talk about your classroom. What do you see? What are the problems that are there? What would you change if you could? One of them, math was, I thought, my biggest problem, the thing I struggled the most with the children, where I had the largest range. My 4th graders did not come in all ready to go at 4th grade level. So that was one major problem. Another one was the self-efficacy of the children. Many of them, first off, will tell you, oh, I'm not good at math. They've already decided. They've already shut down before the year began. So we wanted to try to figure out, can we help that? Can we improve that? And the other thing was, rarely, even though we have this wonderful curriculum provided for us with many bells and whistles, it often doesn't reach every student, every day, every lesson. So we wanted to see, can we do that, at least, if not perfectly, better? Our study took place in Glendora, California. There's our little Glendora in the world, and we're situated at the base of the foothills in the San Gabriel Valley, close to the mountains. Our primary question was, what effect does differentiating instruction based on individual learning profiles and student readiness have on 4th grade elementary math students' summative assessment scores? There was definitely an impact. Secondary question, to what extent will differentiating the instruction have an effect on student self-efficacy in the context of feeling confident about math abilities? What outcomes did we want? What did we want to see? We really did want to see if through multiple learning styles, can we have higher math assessment scores at the end of the unit? And we also wanted to see, will the children feel better about themselves and about what they did and their ability? Well, we started with our literature review, which was huge. There is so much out there. We decided to focus on the myths for our presentation today. A lot of times differentiation, it kind of sometimes can have a negative impact on people, and I have to say, I changed my views on it once I started doing some reading on it. We sometimes think, oh, it's a set of instructional strategies and you have to do that. It really isn't. It's more of a philosophy that's an overarching and encompasses all areas of learning. For instance, not just math or not just reading, but all of our learning areas. Another myth is that okay, I did differentiation, I can check it off my list now. I don't have to worry about that for the rest of my lesson. It really is woven throughout your entire lesson. And the last one, this one was a biggie for me at the beginning, was that you needed to differentiate every lesson, every activity, and I could even add for every student. That's a myth that's out there, and that's not the case either. So you'll find that there are certain things you can target in on a lesson that, ooh, I can pull differentiation in there. Almost in every lesson, almost every day, you'll find something, some way that you can touch that. You're going to see, this is Carol Ann Tomlinson, who I spoke to. We had her quote at the very beginning. This is just a short video, about 2 minutes, but I love what she has to say. She talks about the fact that we're focusing on students' learning goals in differentiation. We're focusing on their readiness, individual readiness. We're focusing on their interests. And you'll see that our study focused on their learning modes as well, their learning styles. There are different ways to differentiate, which we'll talk a little bit, but for our study, we focused on the learning modes. So let's listen to hear what she has to say. It's just about 2 minutes, won't take long. Let's see if she's going to go. If not, I have an assistant over there who's going to do it for me. Thank you.
I think differentiated instruction actually is just teaching with a child in mind. It suggests that we have a responsibility to teach students content, but also that we have to always bear in mind that we teach that content to students, to human beings, and that not all students will understand it the same way or in the same length of time, make the same connections, need the same support system. So differentiated instruction is a way of thinking about teaching, which suggests that we establish very clear learning goals that are very substantial, and then that we teach with an eye on the student, so that we're constantly trying to ascertain where the student is relative to where we're going, and then making adjustments as necessary to make sure that all of the students go with us on the learning journey and arrive at the end where they need to be. For that reason, then, differentiation suggests to us that we need to look at those learning goals and ask how we might adjust our teaching in terms of students' varied readiness levels, their particular interests, and their particular modes of learning, so that learning works, so that it fits for each student in the classroom. We often think about students in a classroom as though the class were just one student, and we speak of them as the students like this, the students don't understand this, when in fact it's rare that a particular moment works equally well for all students. And so differentiation asks us to disaggregate the student into individual human beings and to understand what they bring to the classroom in terms of strengths that we can build on and what they bring in terms of needs that we can address to maximize their possibilities for success.
Go ahead and flip that for me again, please. Thank you. I think that's a great little snippet. She clarified so succinctly what we're trying to cover today. And a little bit of technical difficulty. There we go. There are 4 ways to differentiate. We can differentiate through content, process, product, and learning environment. In content, you'll see that Carol Ann Tomlinson, she focuses a lot on reading differentiation. However, it's the same ideas in math, and you'll see that we've pulled some of those. For instance, in math, we know, especially with Common Core, there's a great deal of reading. And so we want to make sure that they have a variety of reading materials. Even in math, we want to make sure that we have recorded math options for them, which is, with our particular curriculum, we do have those materials available. We want to make sure they've got a strong vocabulary list. In this study, our students worked with, they actually created their own geometry journal. And so they worked with many vocabulary words, and they didn't have to memorize those definitions, but it sure helped that they were writing them down and drawing pictures to help them solidify that in their mind. We also want to make sure that we have visualizations, auditory presentations, and we also want to make sure we're working in small groups. Small groups are a great thing. I found with my students, they really loved it, but at first it was interesting to watch them navigate that small group area in math because there was somebody who would take the lead and want to do it all. but they found that it really worked when they all worked together. Everybody had something to offer, which was a great learning tool for the kids. We also know that there's process. We want to make sure we have tiered activities for the students and provide the scaffolding that they're going to need. We want to make sure that we have high interest level topics, always going to help it win with the kids. Manipulatives, we know they work, they do work even for the older students, and when needed we want to allow that extra time, which some of the students are going to need. The finished product might look different than what we're used to in a traditional setting. Some of them will be putting together portfolios or tests. The grading is often done differently as well. Sometimes it's based on a rubric. The grading for the final tests in this unit, though, were based on our unit test, which comes with the curriculum because it's used as a benchmark in our district. And so we didn't use a rubric in this case, but we did use them throughout the units, so the students were used to that. And the learning environment. We want to make sure that the students are used to having multiple tasks at different times, and that's okay. They need to learn that. We need to learn that there needs to be a quiet work area so that it's not too loud, so that depending on what subject what task they're working on, they can think. We need to have clear and concise classroom rules. This helps a great deal when you're working in that small group environment, that they know what to expect. And routine is stabilized. I think that's, it's a stabilizing force. I think that's interesting that even though we stepped out of our comfort zone in this classroom and we tried some new things, it was very interesting to watch them. At first, that excitement was so high, but as they got used to it, all those new things fell into place and the routine was established and they thrived with it. It was a great experience. This is a picture of our room where the intervention took place. And these are the demographics of our school, Cullen Elementary. And the interesting thing, when I sat down and for the intervention I put my own students' information into the demographics, my classroom very closely mirrors the demographics of our school, which I found very interesting. So it's very much what you see there, our actual class as well. This is what our intervention looked like. We started with 2 surveys, a self-efficacy survey, how do you feel about yourself and math and what you can do, geometry. We did a learning styles inventory and found out what their strengths were and what style they learned best. That was eye-opening for many of them and myself as well. We did pencil and paper pre-tests. We also did online pre-tests that had helps on them. Helps meaning pull-down menus, vocabulary helps, that type of thing. Then we went into the regular unit. We completed the unit with all of the exercises, and with every unit lesson, we had an auditory, visual, and kinesthetic component to every lesson. And so we knew that every learning style was being hit every day. By the end of the intervention, we repeated our survey to see, we had an exit survey. How do you feel about yourself in math? How do you feel you did? How did you do on your tests? We also did an online post-test and with helps, and we also did a paper and pencil test with no help. So we were able to really compare apples to apples. The content of the tests were exactly the same, but the problems were different. So you'll see some graphs about that a little bit later. My partner Heather and myself, we also wanted to make sure that we had validity through triangulation, and we chose 3 forms of validity. Catalytic validity basically is saying we wanted to make sure that the growth that we experienced was valid and that we could use it. Through neutrality and confirmability validity, this one was very important for me because I knew my students very well by this time of the year, and this validity makes sure that you go into it without any preconceived ideas about the students themselves and what they can and cannot do. And the last one, dialogic validity, we wanted to be able to explain to our educating friends what we did, what we found out, this is how you can use it. And I've already used that with my 4th grade team here. I've already shared many of the things that I was able to find when I did my research. This is a visual that gives you an idea. 27% of our class was auditory learners, 10% were visual, 40% kinesthetic. Somewhat surprised me about this 40%, but almost 25%, not quite, have a mix of learning styles, which was really fun. Those were the students that really kind of made their way around the class, helping some of the others that maybe didn't understand one learning style as well as another. You'll also see that we have post-assessments here. 57% performed better on the online test, which makes sense because they do have helps on that. 18% performed better on paper and pencil, and 25% performed equally well on both of them. This is a great chart for our test comparisons. You'll see that overall their scores were 34% higher on the paper and pencil post-test than on the paper and pencil pre-test. I loved this one, and the students enjoyed getting to see how much growth they had made. This is just a point increase for individual students. There was a 34-point average increase overall with all the students in the class. Makes a teacher's heart happy. And the survey says, we asked the kids, what did you think? Geometry was way easier than I thought it would be. I'm better at geometry than any other math. Geometry was cool and I understand it. I'm glad I learned geometry because I can do it better than most math. In calculating these surveys, I found that there was an 87% growth in students and the belief in themselves, their own self-efficacy, that they could do math better. And we've had a talk. You know what? It's not just of this math. If you can do it in this math, you can do it in all math. So it was very exciting and encouraging even to the students. We, in conclusion, we had 100% of the students showed improvement in their post-test from their pre-test. Happy about that, 100% of them. 93% showed some growth in their self-efficacy. And we also learned, differentiation really does help. And I'm looking forward to including it in many more of my lessons next year. It takes work on the front end, but it's time well spent, I should say. We would like to recommend, Heather and myself, that for future studies, it would be very helpful to have more students involved and for a longer period of time. My intervention went on for 3 weeks. That's a very short amount of time. We also feel like it would be interesting to consider many other facets. The family makeup, their cultures, teacher bias, parental attitudes. There's so many other ways you could look at this that we think would be helpful. Most importantly, we think a larger sample group would really help to validate many of the findings. In conclusion, Young Zhao says, to prepare the talents we need for the 21st century, we need to redefine excellence in education. Instead of effectiveness in homogenizing students, an excellent education should support the development of diverse talents. Instead of suppressing creativity and individual differences, an excellent education should deliberately cultivate them. I think that's a wonderful ending to our presentation. I want to thank you for coming today, and if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take those at this time. Yes, ma'am.
You talked about the catalytic validity of
Yes.
your study. Do you anticipate taking this knowledge and wonderful experience you had and moving it into other subject areas?
Absolutely. I know it took me a long time to get this unit ready to go, and I know the amount of time it took is just when I think about multiplying that for all the lessons, but I would definitely like to use it, not only in all my math lessons next year, but I would love to try to bring it into my other areas as well, because I think it really proved to me that it really does make a difference. The kids learn, and they learn no matter, I think just the difference helps them greatly. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is there some way you could share the information that you've garnered from all this studying with the rest of your school?
Yes, I have a principal who's very willing to let us share the things that we have learned. And I know that I can share my PowerPoint, but my team, my 4th grade team, and I have some friends in 5th grade as well that I talk with a lot about what's been going on. I've shared many of the things that I've already learned, and they've used them in their geometry unit. They were a few weeks behind me, and so they were actually able to use those in their class as well. Thank you for coming.
Everybody said,